The dining table was old oak, scarred by decades of use. It had belonged to my grandmother, passed down through the family like a curse disguised as an heirloom. Every scratch told a story. Every stain held a memory. I sat at my usual place, the chair that wobbled slightly because one leg was shorter than the others. It had always been my chair, the chair of the least important person in the room. My mother sat at the head of the table, her glasses perched low on her nose, her eyes scanning me with that familiar expression of disappointment. My father sat across from her, his shoulders hunched, already halfway through his second beer. My brother Marcus was next to him, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up. "So Sarah," my mother said, her voice dripping with false cheer, "how is the job search going?" I paused, a forkful of mashed potatoes halfway to my mouth. "The job search?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "You mentioned you were looking for something better than that data entry position. Any leads?" I put the fork down. The data entry position was what I had told them about 3 years ago. It was a cover story, crafted to hide the truth. They had laughed when I got that job. "Data entry?" my mother had said. "All that education for data entry?" My father had grunted in disappointment. My brother had smirked and said, "At least someone in this family has job security flipping spreadsheets." They did not know that I had left data entry after 6 months. They did not know that I had started working for a tech startup, then a bigger company, then an even bigger one. They did not know that I was now a senior director at one of the largest financial firms in the city. They did not know because they had never bothered to ask. Not really. They had made their assumptions and stuck to them. "Sarah?" my mother prompted. "I am still looking," I said. The lie came easily now. It had been so long that it felt like the truth. My mother sighed. "Well, you know your father and I cannot help you. Things are tight. Marcus needs his tuition paid. The roof needs repairs. We are barely getting by." I nodded, saying nothing. I knew exactly how tight things were. I was the one paying the mortgage. I was the one paying Marcus's tuition. I was the one who paid for the roof repairs last year. They did not know any of that. The money came from an account they did not know about, through a trust they had never questioned. They thought it was an inheritance from a distant aunt. I had invented the aunt, given her a name and a history and a cause of death. The story was elaborate and completely fictional. "If you ask me," Marcus said without looking up from his phone, "Sarah should just take whatever she can get. It is not like she has marketable skills." My mother did not correct him. My father took another sip of beer. I sat there, surrounded by my family, feeling more alone than I had ever felt. I thought about the promotion I had received last week. I thought about the corner office with the view of the skyline. I thought about the bonus that would hit my account in December, enough to pay for Marcus's education 10 times over. I thought about telling them the truth. I had imagined it 100 times. The looks on their faces, the apologies, the sudden respect. But I knew it would not happen that way. They would not apologize. They would feel betrayed. They would find a way to make it my fault. They would demand more. They would never stop demanding. So I kept the lie alive. I played the role of the failure. I smiled through the mockery. I paid their bills from the shadows. And I hated myself for it. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The truth pressed against my chest like a weight. I could not keep doing this. I could not keep pretending to be less than I was. I could not keep supporting people who despised me. I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would call my banker. I would cancel the automatic payments. I would stop being their secret benefactor. And I would finally see what happened when the truth came to light. Whatever it was, it had to be better than this. The silence stretched. My mother broke it first, as she always did. "You know your father has been having trouble with his back." She said, "The doctor says he needs surgery." I nodded, keeping my face neutral. I had already paid for the surgery. The appointment was scheduled for next month. The hospital had been told the bills would be handled. They just did not know by whom. And Marcus needs a new laptop for school. My mother continued. His old one is barely working. I could get him one, I said. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Do not worry about it. We will figure something out. The irony was crushing. They would figure it out, which meant the mysterious trust fund would provide. And the trust fund was me. I had created an elaborate fiction to give my family money without them knowing it came from me. The trust had a backstory. Aunt Margaret, my grandmother's sister, had emigrated to another country decades ago, married a wealthy industrialist, and died childless. She had set aside money for her sister's descendants to be released when the family faced hardship. It was a beautiful story, completely invented. My mother had cried when I first told her about it. I thought we had been forgotten. She had said, I thought she had taken her money to the grave. Instead, the money had arrived at the perfect moment. The mortgage was 2 months behind. The bank was threatening foreclosure. Then the first check arrived. And then another. And another. They never questioned why the checks kept coming. They never questioned why the amount always exactly matched their needs. They just accepted the money as if it were their birthright. I had started the trust 3 years ago because I could not bear to watch them struggle. My mother was working double shifts at the hospital. My father's health was deteriorating. Marcus was about to drop out of school. I had the money. I had the means. So I created Aunt Margaret and started signing checks. At first, it felt good. I was helping my family. I was making their lives better. But over time, the resentment grew. They did not thank me because they did not know it was me. They did not appreciate my sacrifice because they had no idea I was making one. Instead, they looked at me with pity. They looked at me as the failure who could not get her life together. And I let them. I let them because I was afraid. Afraid that if they knew the truth, they would only want me for my money. Afraid that their love was conditional on me being the failure they could feel superior to. But sitting at that dinner table, watching them plan their lives around a fictional aunt, I realized that I was not helping them. I was enabling them. And I was destroying myself in the process. Something had to change. My real office was on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in the financial district. The view was absurd. A panorama of steel and glass that stretched to the horizon. I had a desk made of polished walnut, a chair that cost more than my first car, and an assistant who managed my calendar with surgical precision. I was the senior director of strategic operations at Nexus Financial Group. I managed a team of 47 analysts. I oversaw budgets in the tens of millions. I reported directly to the CEO. And none of my family knew any of this. The journey had started 6 years ago. Fresh out of university, I had a degree in finance and a mountain of student debt. My family had made it clear they expected nothing from me. Sarah was always the dreamer. My mother would say, too busy reading to learn practical skills. I applied for hundreds of jobs. The rejection letters piled up. Finally, I got an offer. Data entry at a small insurance firm. It was not glamorous. It paid barely enough to cover rent. But it was a start. I told my family. My mother laughed. My father shook his head. Marcus said, "Figures." I took the job. I showed up every day. I did the work. And I started learning. I taught myself advanced Excel. Then SQL. Then Python. I stayed late to study the company's financial models. I asked questions. I volunteered for projects no one else wanted. 6 months in, I was promoted. Not to a glamorous position. Just a slightly better one. But it was a crack in the door. I pushed it open. Over the next 4 years, I climbed. Each promotion was harder than the last, each new role demanded more. I worked 60-hour weeks. I sacrificed weekends and holidays and relationships. But I succeeded. I became a manager, then a director, then a senior director. My salary multiplied. My savings grew. But I did not tell my family. At first, I was going to. I wanted to. I wanted to see the look on their faces. But something stopped me. I realized that my success would not change their opinion of me. It would just change what they wanted from me. They would see a bank account, not a daughter. They would see a wallet, not a sister. So I kept the secret. I maintained the data entry fiction. I wore old clothes when I visited. I drove my beat-up car instead of the Mercedes I had bought. I pretended to struggle. And from the shadows, I helped. My mother mentioned the mortgage was tight. The next month, it was paid by the fictional aunt's trust. Marcus needed tuition. The trust covered it. The roof was leaking. The trust handled it. They never questioned. They never investigated. They accepted the money as if it were their due. And they continued to mock the failure who sat at their dinner table. The contradiction would have been hilarious if it were not so painful. My assistant knocked on my door. "Your 11 o'clock is here," she said. I nodded, pushing the thoughts away. Work was my escape. In the office, I was respected. My opinion mattered. My decisions carried weight. I was not the family failure. I was someone important. For the next hour, I focused on the meeting. But in the back of my mind, the decision I had made last night lingered. I was going to stop the payments. I was going to let them see what life looked like without my help. And I was going to finally tell them the truth. Whatever happened next, at least it would be honest. My assistant handed me a coffee and a summary of the morning briefing. I thanked her and scanned the document. Revenue was up. A new client had signed. A potential acquisition was being discussed. This was my world now. Numbers and strategies and decisions that moved millions of dollars. It was a long way from the girl who had been told she would never amount to anything. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The late nights studying while my family slept. The extra classes I took without telling them. The internships I worked for free while pretending to be at a regular job. I had built my career in secret, piece by piece, like a hidden fortress. The first real break came when a manager noticed my work. "You have a talent for this," he said. "You should apply for the analyst program." I did. I got in. I did not tell my family. The program was intense. I learned more in 6 months than I had in 4 years of university. I worked alongside people from top schools. People who had connections and resources I could only dream of. I kept up. I thrived. By the end of the program, I had a job offer. A real job. With a real salary. I called my mother to tell her I had been promoted from data entry. That was all I told her. A promotion. She congratulated me with mild enthusiasm. "That is nice, dear," she said. "Maybe you can finally move out of that apartment." I did not tell her that I had already moved. I did not tell her that my new apartment had a doorman and a gym and a view of the river. I did not tell her because I knew what would happen. She would visit, she would see, and then she would start asking for things. That was when I created Aunt Margaret. It started small. My mother mentioned she was struggling with a bill. I offered to help, but she refused. She did not want money from her failure of a daughter. So I created the trust fund that kept her pride intact while I paid her bills anonymously. It was a brilliant solution. And it was a trap. 3 years later, I was still paying, still hiding, still pretending, and they were still mocking me. I looked at the city through my office window. The skyline stretched to the horizon. A testament to human ambition and achievement. I had achieved so much. But none of it mattered because the people I wanted most to see it did not know it existed. I made a decision. I was going to fix this. Not by telling them the truth. Not yet, but by stopping the payments and letting reality force a conversation. It was going to be painful, but it was the only way forward. The next morning, I called my banker. His name was David, and he had managed my accounts for the past 3 years. He knew everything about my finances, including the secret trust I need to close the trust. I said. There was a pause. May I ask why? He asked. I have been supporting my family anonymously. I said. I want to stop. Another pause. Sarah, he said, you understand that this will have significant consequences for them. I understand. I said. Then let me ask you one question. He said. Do they deserve your support? I thought about it. I thought about the dinner table. I thought about the mockery, the dismissals, the way they looked at me like I was worthless. No, I said. They do not. Then close it. He said. I will send the paperwork. I hung up and sat in my office, staring at the phone. The conversation had been easier than I expected. David had not judged me. He had not tried to talk me out of it. He had simply asked the right question. Do they deserve it? They did not. I opened my laptop and reviewed the ledger I kept. It was a detailed record of every payment I had made over the past 3 years. The numbers were staggering. The mortgage, $2,400 per month. Every month. For 36 months. $86,400. Marcus's tuition, $15,000 per semester. 6 semesters. $90,000. Car payments, $400 per month for my mother's sedan. $300 for my father's truck. $25,200. Medical bills. My father's surgery. My mother's dental work. Marcus's emergency room visit. $43,000. Home repairs. The roof. The furnace. The plumbing. $32,000. Miscellaneous. Groceries. Utilities. Insurance. Credit card payments. Over $50,000. The total was over $300,000. I had secretly paid over $300,000 to support a family that openly despised me. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. I felt sick. Not because I had spent the money. I could afford it. I felt sick because I had spent the money on people who would never appreciate it. And I felt sick because I had been too afraid to stop. But that was over now. The payments would stop at the end of the month. Marcus's tuition for this semester was already paid, so he would finish. But the mortgage would not be covered. The car payments would not be made. The insurance would lapse. And my family would finally have to face reality. I wondered how long it would take them to figure it out. I wondered if they would call me for help. I wondered if they would ever connect the dots. Part of me hoped they would. Part of me wanted them to know it was me. Part of me wanted to see the look on their faces when they realized that the failure they had mocked was the only reason they still had a roof over their heads. But a larger part of me was terrified. Terrified of the confrontation. Terrified of the anger. Terrified that even the truth would not change how they saw me. I took a deep breath and turned back to my work. There was nothing to do now but wait. David the banker was efficient. Within an hour, I received an email with the closure documents for the trust. I reviewed them carefully. The trust would be dissolved at the end of the month. All automatic payments would stop. Any remaining balance would be returned to my main account. I signed the documents and sent them back. Then I sat in my office and waited for the feeling to hit. The feeling came later that night. I was home, sitting on my couch, when the reality settled over me like a cold fog. I had just cut off my family. Not dramatically, not with a confrontation, just with a signature on a digital document. They did not know it yet, but in 3 weeks, their world would start to crumble. I thought about calling my mother to warn her. But what would I say? By the way, the mysterious aunt who has been supporting you for 3 years does not exist. I made her up. And now I am cutting you off. Good luck. No. That was not the way. They needed to feel the impact first. They needed to understand what losing the money meant. Then, maybe, they would be ready to hear the truth. The next few weeks were strange. I went to work. I attended meetings. I pretended everything was normal. But inside, I was a storm of emotions. Guilt and relief. Fear and anticipation. I kept imagining the phone calls that would come. My mother's voice. Frantic. My father's silence. Marcus's anger. I rehearsed my responses. I practiced being calm. I practiced being firm. When the calls finally came, they were exactly as I had imagined. My mother called about the mortgage. Marcus called about his tuition. My father called about the car payments. I listened. I expressed concern. I promised to look into it. And I did nothing. Each call deepened the crack in my resolve. But each call also reminded me why I was doing this. They were not calling to check on me. They were not calling to see how I was doing. They were calling because the money had stopped. They needed something from me. They always needed something. I was done being their provider. I was done being invisible. I was ready to be seen. Thanksgiving came. I drove to my parents' house in my old car, wearing clothes I had bought at a discount store. The house looked the same as always. A modest suburban home with peeling paint and a sagging porch. I had paid to have the porch repaired twice. But it was still sagging because my father had hired a cheap contractor and refused to listen to my advice. The driveway was full. My mother's car, my father's truck, Marcus's coupe, they were all here. I parked on the street and walked up to the front door. I could hear them laughing inside. The sound stopped when I entered. My mother was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. She glanced up when I walked in. "Sarah," she said, "you made it. I was not sure you would come." "Of course I came," I said. "It is Thanksgiving." She nodded, but her expression said something else. She had expected me to bail. She was disappointed that I had not. Marcus was in the living room, watching football. He grunted when I walked past. My father was in his armchair, already half asleep. The television droned. The turkey was dry. The conversation was stilted. We talked about the weather, about Marcus's classes, about the neighbor's dog. We did not talk about anything real. We never did. Then Marcus brought it up. "So Sarah," he said, "any luck with the job hunt?" "Not yet," I said. He shook his head. "You know, I could put in a word at my job. We are always looking for warehouse workers. The pay is decent." I felt a flash of anger. Marcus worked at a warehouse. There was nothing wrong with that. But the way he said it, the condescension in his voice, made me want to scream. "I am fine," I said. "Suit yourself," he said. "Just trying to help." My mother chimed in. "Marcus is just looking out for you. Sarah, you should be grateful." I looked at the three of them. My mother, who had not spoken to me with kindness in years. My father, who had checked out of family life decades ago. My brother, who saw me as a burden. They had no idea who I really was. And I was tired of hiding. I finished my meal in silence. When the plates were cleared, I helped with the dishes. My mother stood beside me at the sink, washing while I dried. "You seem different," she said. "Distant." "I am fine," I said. "You have seemed distant for a while now," she said. "Ever since you got that data entry job. You changed." I almost laughed. I had changed because of the data entry job? No. I had changed because I had realized that my family did not love me. They loved the idea of me as a failure. It made them feel better about themselves. "I think I am going to leave early," I said. "It is a long drive." "But you just got here," my mother said. "I know," I said. I kissed her on the cheek, a gesture that felt hollow. I said goodbye to my father and my brother. They barely looked up. I walked out to my car and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, staring at the house. Then I drove home to my apartment. My real home. The one they had never seen. The payments would stop at the end of the month. Part of me could not wait. Part of me was dreading it. But all of me knew that it had to be done. The week between Christmas and New Year was always strange. The office was empty. The city was quiet. I spent most of my time alone, reflecting on the year that had passed and the one ahead. I thought about the last Thanksgiving. The dry turkey. The stilted conversation. The moment when Marcus offered me a warehouse job with such condescension that I had wanted to scream. I had not screamed. I had smiled and said I was fine. I had played my role perfectly. The failure daughter. The disappointment. The burden. The word echoed in my mind. Burden. Is that what I was to them? I paid their mortgage. I paid for Marcus's education. I paid for my father's surgery. I had given them over $300,000. And they still looked at me like I was the one who needed saving. I thought about what Diana had said. They are not villains. They are just small. She was right. My family was not evil. They were just small. Small-minded. Small-hearted. They had built their self-esteem on the foundation of my supposed failure. My success threatened that foundation. So they could not see it. They could not acknowledge it. Because if I was successful, then what were they? People who had treated their daughter poorly for no reason. People who had wasted years mocking a child who was secretly supporting them. No, it was easier to keep me in the box they had built. The failure box. It was comfortable. It was familiar. It did not challenge them to grow. I had kept myself in that box too. I had hidden my success to protect their feelings. I had played small to make them feel big. But I was done. I was done shrinking myself to fit their expectations. I was done paying for the privilege of being dismissed. The new year would bring change. Not just in the calendar, but in my life. The payments would stop. The truth would come out. And whatever happened after that, I would face it as myself. Not as the failure they imagined, but as the person I had actually become. Someone strong. Someone successful. Someone who was finally ready to be seen. I made a resolution. Not the typical gym membership resolution, but a real one. This year, I would stop hiding. This year, I would tell the truth. This year, I would find out if my family could love the real me. And if they could not, I would learn to live with that too. I met my friend Diana for drinks the next evening. Diana was the only person who knew the truth about my job and my family. She had been my roommate in university. And she had watched the whole saga unfold from the beginning. You look terrible, she said as I sat down. Thanks, I said. I feel terrible. She signaled the bartender. Tell me everything. I told her about Thanksgiving. I told her about the ledger. I told her about the decision to stop the payments. She listened without interrupting, which was rare for Diana. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "It is about time." I blinked. What? It is about time, she repeated. I have been watching you destroy yourself for these people for 3 years. You pay their bills. You absorb their abuse. You show up to every family function and let them kick you. And for what? Because you love them? I do not know anymore. I admitted. I think I love the idea of them. The family I wish I had. But the real them? I am not sure. That is a start, Diana said, recognizing the difference. She sipped her drink. Do you want my honest opinion? Always, I said. They do not deserve your help. Not because they are bad people. They are not villains. They are just small. They are small-minded and small-hearted. And they take their insecurities out on you because it is easier than facing their own failures. Your mother never achieved what she wanted in life. So she tears you down. Your father checked out years ago because he could not handle the pressure. Marcus is just following their example. Cutting them off is not cruelty, Sarah. It is self-preservation. I nodded slowly. I knew she was right. But it still felt wrong. They are my family, I said. That does not give them the right to treat you like garbage. Diana said. You are not their punching bag. You are not their ATM. You are a person. And you have spent too long pretending to be less than you are. I took a long sip of my drink. What if they find out the truth? I asked. What if they figure out it was me paying for everything all along? Then they will have to confront the reality of who you are and who they have been. Diana said. And that is terrifying for them. But it is necessary. I thought about that. She was right. The family needed to face reality. And I needed to stop hiding. I finished my drink and made a decision. I was not going to just stop the payments. I was going to tell them the truth. I was going to sit them down and explain everything. The job, the money, the years of silent support. And then I was going to walk away and let them process it however they needed to. I called my banker the next morning. David, I said, I need to do something else. I need to schedule a meeting with my family. I need to tell them the truth. I met Diana for brunch on New Year's Day. She was nursing a hangover. But she perked up when I told her about the trust closure. You actually did it? She asked. I actually did it, I said. She raised her orange juice in a toast to the death of Aunt Margaret. She said, may she rest in peace. I said, clinking glasses. But seriously, Diana said, how do you feel? I considered the question. Scared, I admitted, but also relieved. Like I have been holding my breath for 3 years and I am finally exhaling. That is a good sign. She said, it means you are doing the right thing. I hope so, I said. The calls have started. My mother is panicking about the mortgage. Marcus is angry about his tuition. My father is doing his silent treatment thing. What did you tell them? She asked. That I would look into it. I said. Diana nodded. Good. Let them sit with it for a while. They need to understand that this is real. They need to feel the consequences before you explain anything. I know, I said, but it is hard. I hate hearing the panic in my mother's voice. I hate knowing I could fix it with a single phone call to the bank. But if I do that, nothing changes. They will never learn. And I will never be free. Exactly. Diana said. You are not being cruel. You are being necessary. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people is let them face the consequences of their own lives. I thought about that. She was right. My family had been living in a fantasy world where money appeared magically and they never had to take responsibility. I had created that fantasy. Now I was ending it. It was going to hurt. But it was necessary. Diana reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I am proud of you. She said. This takes courage. More courage than getting the job or earning the money. This is the hard part. I squeezed back. I know, I said, but I am ready. We finished our brunch and walked out into the cold January air. The year stretched ahead, full of uncertainty and possibility. I did not know how my family would react when they learned the truth. But I knew I would face it, not as the scared girl who hid in the shadows, but as the woman who had built a life worth being proud of. The end of the month came. I did not call my family. I did not warn them. I simply let the automatic payments expire. The first sign of trouble came a week later. My mother called me on a Tuesday evening. Her voice was tight, strained. Sarah, she said, something strange happened. What is it? I asked. The mortgage payment did not go through. She said. The bank said the automatic transfer was cancelled. I called the trust account. But there was no answer. I kept my voice neutral. That is strange. Maybe there was a mistake. I said. Can you look into it? She asked. I know you are busy with your job. But I do not know who else to ask. I felt a pang of guilt. But I pushed it down. I will see what I can find out. I said. I hung up and stared at the phone. The first crack had appeared. The next day, Marcus called. His voice was angry. Sarah, he said, my tuition payment bounced. The school is saying I need to pay by the end of the week or I will be dropped from next semester's classes. I do not know what to tell you. I said, why are you calling me? Because Mom said you were looking into the trust thing. He said, did you find anything? I have not had a chance yet. I said, well, figure it out. He said, this is important. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my office, the phone still in my hand. The cracks were spreading. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation escalated. The car payments were missed. The insurance lapsed. The credit card bills went unpaid. My mother called me every day, her voice growing more frantic. My father called once, which was unusual. He did not say much, just that something was wrong and I needed to fix it. They still did not suspect me. They still thought I was just the failure who could help them navigate a bureaucratic problem. They had no idea that I was the one who had caused it. I kept up the act. I promised to look into it. I expressed concern. I played the role of the helpful but useless daughter. It was exhausting, but I held on. I was waiting for the right moment. I wanted them to feel the full weight of what was happening before I revealed the truth. I wanted them to understand, really understand, what they had lost. Diana called me one night. How are you holding up? She asked. I am tired, I said, but I am okay. You know you do not have to go through with the big reveal. She said, you could just let the payments stay cancelled and never say a word. They would never know it was you. I considered it. It would be easier. But no, I said. They need to know. Not for revenge. For honesty. They have spent years seeing me as someone I am not. It is time they met the real me. Diana sighed. You are a better person than I am. She said. No. I said. I am just tired of hiding. January was the cruelest month. The calls became more frantic. My mother left messages that shifted from confusion to anger to pleading and back again. Marcus sent texts that were increasingly hostile. My father did not call at all, which somehow felt worse. I kept my responses vague and sympathetic. I am sorry. I cannot figure out what happened. I will keep trying. Let me know if there is anything I can do. The lies tasted bitter, but I held on. I was waiting for the right moment. The moment when they were desperate enough to listen. That moment came on a cold Tuesday in late January. My mother called, her voice raw. They are going to take the house. She said, we received a notice of foreclosure. We have 30 days. I felt my stomach drop. I had known it was coming. But hearing the words still hit me like a physical blow. Mom, I said, I am so sorry. There is nothing we can do. She said, we have tried everything. The bank will not work with us. We do not have the money. I closed my eyes. I could end this right now. I could tell her I would pay. I could make the call and save the house. But then nothing would change. Mom, I said, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Her voice sharpened. What is it? Not over the phone. I said, I will come over this weekend. We need to talk. All of us. Sarah, you are scaring me. She said, I am not trying to scare you. I said, but this is important. Please, just trust me. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, fine. Saturday. I will tell your father and Marcus. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my apartment. The city lights glittered through the window. Saturday. 3 days away. 3 days until everything changed. I spent those days in a fog. I went to work. I completed my tasks. I had conversations that I do not remember. My mind was elsewhere, rehearsing the conversation I was about to have. I thought about bringing Diana with me for support. But no, this was my battle. I had to fight it alone. Saturday morning arrived. I woke early. Before the sun. I dressed carefully. Professional clothes. The clothes of the person I really was. I drove to my parents' house in my real car. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, gathering myself. Then I walked to the front door and knocked. My mother opened it. Her eyes widened when she saw the car. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "Who are you?" she asked. I stepped inside. "I am your daughter," I said, "and I have a story to tell you." By the third week, the family was in crisis. I knew because my mother called me every single day, sometimes twice. The details spilled out in fragments of panic. The bank had sent a notice of default on the mortgage. The car had been repossessed. Marcus had been put on academic probation. The electricity had been shut off for 3 days before my mother scraped together enough cash to restore it. I listened. I expressed sympathy. I offered nothing else. "I am going to lose the house," my mother said one night, her voice breaking. "After everything we have been through, I am going to lose the house." It was not just a house. I wanted to say, "I paid for that house. I kept it standing while you sat in your chair and mocked me." But I said nothing. "We need you to come home," she said. "We need to figure this out as a family." I agreed. I set a date for the following Saturday. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my apartment. The skyline glittered through the window. The city was alive with lights. But I felt hollow. This was not a victory. This was a tragedy that had been years in the making. And I was about to deliver the final blow. I spent the next few days preparing. I gathered documents. I printed bank statements and transaction histories. I wrote down everything I wanted to say. I rehearsed it in front of the mirror. The words felt foreign in my mouth. On Saturday morning, I drove to my parents' house. I took my real car, the Mercedes. I wore my real clothes, a tailored coat and leather boots. I did not hide. I pulled into the driveway and saw my mother through the window. Her face was a mask of confusion as she saw the car. Then she saw me step out. I walked to the front door and knocked. My mother opened it. She stared at me, at my clothes, at the car behind me. "Sarah?" she said. Her voice was uncertain. "May I come in?" I asked. She stepped aside. I walked into the living room. My father was in his armchair. Marcus was on the couch. They both looked up and froze. The room was silent. I sat down across from them. I placed a folder of documents on the coffee table. "We need to talk," I said. The living room had not changed. Same worn couch. Same old television. Same family photos on the wall. Frozen moments from a time when we were all still pretending. My mother sat in her usual chair. My father stood by the window, his back to the room. Marcus was on the couch, his arms crossed. I stood in the center, facing them. I looked at each of them in turn. My mother, who had always wanted more than life gave her. My father, who had given up so long ago. My brother, who had followed their example without question. They were not bad people. They were just people, flawed and frightened and stuck in patterns they did not know how to break. I started talking. I told them about the data entry job and how I had left it after 6 months. I told them about the analyst program and the promotions and the senior director title. I told them about my salary and my bonuses and the corner office on the 42nd floor. I watched their faces shift. Shock, disbelief, confusion, anger. I kept talking. I told them about Aunt Margaret, the fictional aunt I had created to give them money without accepting credit. I told them about the $300,000, the mortgage, the tuition, the cars, the medical bills, the endless stream of payments I had made to keep them afloat. Then there was nothing. Then I sat down in the empty chair across from them and waited. The silence was absolute. Then my father spoke. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you hide it?" I looked at him. His eyes were wet. I had never seen my father cry before. Because I was afraid, I said. Afraid that if you knew what I had achieved, you would only see the money. That you would love me for what I could give you, not for who I am. And I was afraid that if you knew I was the one paying for everything, you would feel ashamed, and I did not want to be the cause of your shame. So I hid. I lied. I let you think I was a failure because that was easier than being seen. My mother was crying now. Soft, silent tears. Oh, Sarah, she said, what have we done to you? You did not do anything to me. I said, you just did not see me. And I did not let you. But that ends now. I am done hiding. I am done pretending. This is who I really am. I am your daughter. I am successful. And I have been taking care of this family for 3 years without any of you knowing. I am not telling you this to hurt you. I am telling you because I want us to be honest with each other. For the first time in our lives, my father turned back to the window. His shoulders shook. My mother reached out her hand. I took it, and we sat there, together, in the wreckage of all our secrets. My mother was the first to speak. What is going on? She asked. Her voice was shaking. Whose car is that? It is mine, I said. The silence that followed was suffocating. Yours? Marcus repeated. You cannot afford a car like that. Actually, I said, I can. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. My name is Sarah Chen. I am the Senior Director of Strategic Operations at Nexus Financial Group. I have held this position for 2 years. Before that, I was Director of Operations. Before that, I was a manager. The data entry job ended 6 years ago. My mother sat down heavily. Her face had gone pale. I do not understand, she said. I spread the documents across the table. Bank statements, pay stubs, my employment contract, the evidence of my real life. I make $240,000 a year, I said, plus bonuses. Last year, my total compensation was just over $300,000. Marcus's mouth hung open. That is not possible, he said. And yet here are the records. I said, but that is not all. I pulled out another set of documents. For the past 3 years, I have been supporting this family financially. I paid the mortgage. I paid Marcus's tuition. I paid for the cars, the repairs, the medical bills. Over $300,000 in total. The trust fund from Aunt Margaret. My mother whispered. It does not exist. I said. I made her up. The money came from me. My father stood up. His face was red. You lied to us? He shouted. For 3 years. You lied? Yes, I said calmly. I lied. Because I knew that if you knew the truth, you would treat me differently. You would see a bank account instead of a daughter. And I was right. Look at yourself right now. You are not angry that I lied. You are angry that the money has stopped. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. My mother was crying. I did not want to hurt you. I said. I wanted to help, but I could not keep pretending to be someone I am not. And I could not keep supporting people who treat me like I am worthless. I stood up. The payments have stopped, I said. The house is in default. The tuition is unpaid. The cars are gone. What happens next is up to you. You can figure it out on your own. Or you can accept my help. But on new terms, I love you. You are my family. But I will not be your victim anymore. I walked out. The door closed behind me. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the cold air. Then I got in my car and drove away. The conversation lasted for hours. There were more tears. There were accusations. There were moments when I thought the fragile peace would shatter. But we kept talking. Marcus admitted he had always felt inferior to me. I am the older sibling. He said, I was supposed to be the successful one. But you were always smarter. Always harder working. I could not keep up. So I made jokes at your expense to make myself feel better. It was wrong. I am sorry. My mother admitted she had projected her own failures onto me. I wanted you to be different. She said, I wanted you to be everything I could not be. But when you did not fit the mold I had created, I did not know how to handle it. So I criticized. I pushed. I made you feel small. I am sorry for that. My father did not say much. But what he said mattered. I was not there for you. He said, I was not there for any of you. I was too busy feeling sorry for myself. I checked out, and I left your mother to carry everything alone. I left you to grow up without a father. I cannot undo that, but I can acknowledge it. I am sorry. I listened to each of them. Their words did not erase the years of pain, but they opened a door to something new. I told them I was not going to resume the payments. That part of our relationship was over. But I told them I would help them figure out their next steps. I would help them create a plan. I would help them become self-sufficient, not because I owed them, but because I loved them. And love meant teaching people to stand on their own, not carrying them forever. We ended the night exhausted but lighter. As I was leaving, my mother hugged me, really hugged me, the kind of hug she had not given me since I was a child. I am proud of you, she whispered, for everything, not just the money, for who you are. I hugged her back, and I believed her. I drove home through the empty streets, tears streaming down my face. But they were not sad tears. They were the tears of someone who had finally been seen. For a week, nobody called. I went to work. I attended meetings. I reviewed reports. I pretended that everything was normal. But at night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. Had I been too harsh? Had I been cruel? I thought about my mother's face when I told her the truth. The shock, the betrayal, the tears. I thought about my father's anger. I thought about Marcus's silence. They had not deserved my cruelty, but they had deserved the truth. And the truth was painful. On the 8th day, Marcus called. His voice was different, quieter, less confident. Sarah, he said, can we talk? I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my office. He was already there when I arrived. He looked different too, smaller. Somehow, his usual swagger was gone. I sat down across from him. He did not meet my eyes. I have been doing some thinking, he said, about what you told us. I waited. I was angry at first. He continued, really angry. I felt like you had tricked us, made us look stupid. But then I started thinking about all the things I said to you over the years. The jokes about your job. The comments about you being a failure. I was a jerk. I know that now. He finally looked up. I am sorry, Sarah. I am sorry for being part of the reason you felt like you had to hide. I blinked back tears. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. He nodded. I do not expect you to start paying for things again. He said, that is not why I am here. I just wanted to say I am sorry. We talked for an hour. For the first time in years. We talked like siblings. He told me about his struggles at school, his fear of failing, his jealousy of my success. I told him about my loneliness, my fear of rejection, my exhaustion from pretending. It was not a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. When we parted, he hugged me. It was the first time he had hugged me in years. I drove home with tears streaming down my face. But they were not sad tears. They were hopeful ones. My mother called the next day. Her voice was careful, measured. Sarah, she said, Marcus told me about your conversation. I am glad you two talked. So am I said. There was a long pause. Then she said, I have been thinking about everything. About how I treated you. About how I made you feel. I am not good at apologizing. I never have been. But I am sorry. I held the phone tight. Thank you, Mom, I said. I do not expect you to forgive me overnight. She said, But I want to try to do better. I want to be better. That is all I ask. I said. My father's letter arrived 3 weeks later. It came in a plain envelope with my address handwritten in his shaky script. I recognized the handwriting immediately. He had never been good with written communication. Phone calls were brief. Conversations were minimal. But a letter was different. A letter meant he had taken time. He had thought about what he wanted to say. He had chosen his words carefully. I opened it at my kitchen table. Alone. In the quiet of a Sunday morning. The paper was standard notebook paper. Torn along the perforated edge. The pen had been blue ink. Some words were crossed out and rewritten. He had tried to get it right. Sarah. The letter began. I have been trying to write this for 2 weeks. Every time I sit down, I do not know what to say. I have never been good with words. That is why I stay quiet. But I need to say this. I am sorry. I am sorry for not being there when you were growing up. I am sorry for not supporting you. I am sorry for letting your mother carry the weight of the family while I hid in my garage or behind a beer. I am sorry for not seeing you. You asked why we never noticed your success. The answer is simple. We were too busy with our own failure to see anything else. I was too busy feeling like a failure as a father, as a husband, as a man. I could not see that my daughter was thriving because it would have meant facing the fact that I was not. That is a hard thing to admit. But it is the truth. You deserved better. You deserved a father who believed in you. You got me instead. I cannot change the past, but I can change the future. I can try to be better. I can try to be the father you deserved from the beginning. It will not be easy. I am old and set in my ways. But I will try. Because you are worth it. You have always been worth it. I just did not know how to show it. I love you, Sarah. I am proud of you. And I am grateful that you are my daughter. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer where I kept important things. I called my father that afternoon. He answered on the first ring. I got your letter, I said. There was a pause. Then his voice, rough and uncertain. What did you think? I think it is the most honest thing you have ever said to me. I said. And I love you too. Dad. We talked for an hour. About nothing and everything. It was not perfect, but it was real, and it was the beginning of something new. My father did not call. Weeks passed. The holiday season approached. My mother and I spoke regularly now. Short conversations that were slowly growing longer. Marcus texted me memes. A small but meaningful gesture. But my father remained silent. I knew he was struggling. My mother told me he had been drinking more. That he spent most of his time in the garage, tinkering with old projects. That he barely spoke at dinner. I thought about calling him. But I was not sure what I would say. Then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, on lined paper torn from a notebook. The handwriting was shaky, unfamiliar. I opened it with trembling hands. Sarah, it read, I am not good with words. You know that. I never know what to say. That is why I stay quiet. But I have been thinking about what you told us. About the money. About your job. About how we treated you. I am not going to make excuses. I was a bad father. I was too busy feeling sorry for myself to see what was right in front of me. You were always the smartest one in the family. I knew that, but I never told you. I was jealous. Jealous that you had opportunities I never had. Jealous that you made something of yourself when I never did. I am ashamed of that. You deserved a father who supported you. You got me instead. I am sorry. I do not expect you to forgive me. But I wanted you to know the truth. I love you, Sarah. I always have. I just did not know how to show it. I read the letter 3 times. Then I called my mother. Is Dad there? I asked. She put him on the phone. There was a long silence. Then I said, I got your letter. He did not respond. Thank you, I said, for writing it, for saying what you said. I love you too, Dad. I heard him exhale, a long shaky breath. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, he said, I love you too, kiddo. We did not say much else. We did not need to. The letter had said everything. That night, I sat in my apartment and looked out at the city. The lights twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, my family was learning to change. And so was I. The house sold in March. It was a small house. The one I had grown up in. 3 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. A backyard that my father had never quite managed to maintain. It held 30 years of memories. Birthday parties and holiday dinners and arguments and silences. It held the ghosts of the people we used to be. My mother called me the day after the sale closed. It is done, she said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the emotion underneath. The new owners take possession next month. How do you feel? I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I thought I would be devastated. But I am not. It is just a house. It is not who we are. I was proud of her. 3 months ago, she would have been crushed. 3 months ago, she would have seen the loss of the house as a personal failure. But she had changed. They all had. My mother had found a job at a bookstore and discovered she loved it. She came alive in a way I had never seen. My father had stopped drinking and started walking every morning. He had lost weight and gained energy. He was applying for jobs. Something he had not done in 20 years. Marcus had dropped out of university. But he had enrolled in community college. He was taking classes in graphic design. Something he had always been interested in but never pursued. He was working part-time at a restaurant and seemed happier than I had ever seen him. They had found a small apartment across town. It was not much. 2 bedrooms. A tiny kitchen. A living room that barely fit their furniture. But it was theirs. They were paying for it themselves. I visited them at the new apartment for the first time in April. My mother gave me a tour, pointing out the features she loved. The natural light in the kitchen. The tree outside the bedroom window. The proximity to the bookstore. It is small, she said, but it is ours. I hugged her. It is perfect, I said, and I meant it. That evening, we had dinner at a small table in the corner of the living room. My father made his famous pasta. Marcus told stories about his new job. My mother talked about the books she was reading. I sat and listened, a smile on my face. This was not the family I had grown up with. This was a new family. A family that had been through the fire and come out the other side. They were not perfect. Neither was I. But we were learning. We were growing. We were becoming something better. Christmas came. I drove to my parents' house in my real car, wearing my real clothes. This time, I did not hide. The house looked different, not physically, but the feeling had changed. The tension that had always hung in the air was thinner. My mother greeted me at the door with a hug. A real hug, not the stiff embrace she usually gave. Marcus was in the living room. He waved. My father was in his armchair. He stood up when I walked in. We looked at each other. Then he opened his arms. I walked into them. It was awkward and unfamiliar. But it was real. Dinner was different too. The conversation was still stilted in places. But it was honest. We talked about real things. My mother talked about her fears of losing the house. My father talked about his health. Marcus talked about dropping out of school. I listened. And then I offered a different kind of help. I am not going to pay your bills anymore, I said. That part of our relationship is over. But I will help you figure out how to pay them yourselves. I can help you create a budget. I can help you negotiate with the bank. I can help you find a more affordable place to live. I cannot save you, but I can teach you how to save yourselves. My mother nodded slowly. That sounds fair, she said. My father grunted his agreement. Marcus said, I think I want to go back to school, but part-time, and with a plan this time. I smiled. Then let us make a plan, I said. We spent the rest of the evening working on it. It was not easy. There were arguments and frustrations and moments where it felt hopeless. But we kept going. By the end of the night, we had a rough outline. My mother would find a part-time job. My father would sell his truck. Marcus would enroll in community college. They would list the house for sale and find a smaller apartment. It was not the life they had imagined, but it was a life they could sustain. On my way out, my mother stopped me. Thank you, she said, for not giving up on us. I took her hand. I never will, I said. I just needed to stop carrying you. Summer arrived in a blaze of heat and light. The city transformed. Patios filled with people. The streets hummed with energy. I spent my weekends exploring neighborhoods I had never visited, trying restaurants I had never noticed. I was rediscovering my city. And I was rediscovering myself. My therapy sessions continued. I talked about my family, my childhood, my need to please people who could not be pleased. I talked about the guilt I still carried, the voice that told me I had been too harsh, too cruel, too abrupt. My therapist listened patiently. Then she asked a question that stopped me cold. What do you think would have happened if you had never stopped the payments? I thought about it. I would still be hiding. I said. I would still be pretending to be someone I am not. They would still be dependent on me. Nothing would have changed. Exactly, she said. You did not just help them. You freed yourself. I had never thought of it that way. I had focused so much on the pain of the confrontation that I had not recognized the liberation it brought. I was free. Free from the lies. Free from the burden. Free from the constant performance of being less than I was. It was a profound realization. I took my mother to lunch the following week. We sat at a cafe near her bookstore, eating salads and watching people walk by. She looked different, younger, lighter. I am thinking about going back to school, she said. I was surprised. For what? I asked. I always wanted to study literature, she said, but I never had the chance. Now I do. I think I am going to enroll in some classes at the community college. I smiled. That is wonderful, Mom. I think you would be great at it. She reached across the table and took my hand. You know, she said, I spent so many years being angry at the world for what it did not give me. I never stopped to look at what I already had. I had a daughter who loved me enough to take care of me in secret. I had a son who was finding his own path. I had a husband who was trying to change. I had so much, and I did not see any of it until you showed me. I squeezed her hand. We had both been blind, but now we could see. The new year brought changes. My mother started working at a local bookstore. It was not a glamorous job, but she enjoyed it. She came alive in a way I had not seen in years. Chatting with customers, organizing shelves, recommending books. She was happy. My father sold his truck and bought a bicycle. He started walking every morning. He lost weight. His health improved. He still drank, but less. He was trying. Marcus enrolled in community college. He was taking 2 classes, working part-time at a restaurant. He called me occasionally for advice. I was proud of him. The house sold in February. It was bittersweet, watching them pack up the home I had grown up in. But it was necessary. They moved into a small apartment across town. It was cramped and imperfect, but it was theirs. They were paying for it themselves. I visited every few weeks. The visits were still awkward at times. Old habits died hard, but we were building something new. A relationship based on honesty instead of lies. Respect instead of resentment. Love instead of obligation. One evening in March, I sat with my mother on her new balcony. The view was nothing special. Just a parking lot and a strip of sky. But she looked at it like it was the most beautiful thing in the world. I never thought I would be here. She said, living in an apartment, working a retail job, starting over at my age. Are you okay with it? I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think I am. It is not what I planned. But it is real. It is mine. I thought about that word. Mine. For years. I had given my family everything they had. And in doing so, I had taken away their ability to own anything themselves. Their house. Their cars. Their stability. None of it was truly theirs. It was all borrowed from a daughter they did not respect. Now they were building something of their own. It was smaller. It was harder. But it was theirs. And that made all the difference. I think that is the best gift I ever gave you. I said. What? My mother asked. Not the money. I said. But taking it away. She looked at me. Then she laughed. It was a surprised sound. Like she had not expected to find humor in the situation. You know what? She said. I think you are right. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun set. The sky turned orange and pink and purple. It was not a spectacular sunset. But it was beautiful. Marcus and I developed a new rhythm. He came to my apartment every Wednesday evening. We ordered pizza or Thai food and watched movies or just talked. It was a small ritual. But it meant everything to me. One Wednesday in July, he arrived looking different. His usual slouch was gone. His eyes were bright. I got accepted, he said, holding up a letter. Accepted into what? I asked. The graphic design program at the Art Institute. He said. Full scholarship. I screamed. I actually screamed. I jumped up and hugged him so hard he coughed. Marcus. That is amazing. I am so proud of you. He laughed. But his eyes were wet. I could not have done it without you. He said. Without you cutting us off. I would have stayed in that engineering program I hated. I would have kept taking your money and hating myself for it. You forced me to figure out what I actually wanted. And this is it. I wiped my eyes. I did not force you to do anything. I said. You did this yourself. Yeah, he said. But you gave me the push I needed. We sat down to eat. But I could barely focus on the food. I was too busy feeling grateful. Grateful that we had found our way back to each other. Grateful that the pain had led to something beautiful. Later that night, after Marcus had left, I sat on my balcony and looked up at the stars. The city hummed below me. A million lives unfolding in the darkness. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The lies. The secrets. The confrontation. The healing. It had been the hardest year of my life. But it had also been the most transformative. I had lost a family. And I had gained a new one. Not perfect. Not without scars. But real. And that was everything. I went inside and checked my phone. There was a text from my father. It was a photo of a small garden he had planted on the balcony of the apartment. Tomatoes. Basil. Peppers. The caption read, "Growing things." I smiled and texted back. "You are." A moment later, 3 dots appeared. Then his reply, "So are you." I put the phone down and looked around my apartment. It was full of evidence of my life. Books I loved. Art I had collected. Photos of people I cared about. It was not just an apartment. It was a home. A home I had built myself. A home I was proud of. Spring arrived. The city thawed. The trees along my street bloomed with white and pink flowers. I walked to work most days now, enjoying the warmth. My life had settled into a new rhythm. Work was still demanding, but I had learned to set boundaries. I left the office by 7 most evenings. I took weekends off. I started seeing a therapist. A kind woman who helped me unpack years of suppressed anger and guilt. And I started rebuilding my relationship with my family. It was not a straight line. There were setbacks. My mother and I had an argument in April about money. She wanted to borrow some to cover an unexpected expense. I refused. She was hurt. I was frustrated. But we talked it through. She found another solution. We moved forward. Marcus and I grew closer. He came to my apartment for dinner once a week. We watched movies and ordered takeout and talked about nothing and everything. He was becoming a person I actually liked, not just a brother I tolerated. My father remained the most distant, but he was trying. He sent me articles he thought I would find interesting. He texted me on random days just to say hello. Small gestures, but they meant everything. In May, my mother suggested a family dinner at my apartment. It would be the first time they had all seen where I lived. I was nervous. My apartment was a reflection of my real life, my real job, my real success. I was not sure how they would react, but I agreed. They came on a Saturday afternoon. My mother brought a salad. My father brought a bottle of wine. Marcus brought his girlfriend, a quiet woman named Elena who seemed to ground him. I gave them a tour. The spare bedroom I used as an office. The view of the city from my balcony. The art on my walls. Pieces I had collected from my travels. They were quiet. I could not read their expressions. Then my mother said, "This is beautiful, Sarah." "Really?" My father nodded. "You have done well for yourself," he said. Marcus grinned. "Can I move in?" he joked. We laughed. The tension broke. We spent the evening together. We ate and talked and laughed. It was not perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was real. And it was ours. At the end of the night, my mother hugged me tight. "I am proud of you," she whispered. I had waited my whole life to hear her say those words. I held on and did not let go. August brought a heat wave. The city sweltered. The air conditioning in my apartment struggled to keep up. I spent most weekends at the beach, escaping the concrete oven. But even the heat could not dampen my mood. I was happy, truly happy, for the first time in as long as I could remember. I was content with my life. My work was fulfilling. My relationships were honest. My future was open. I had spent so many years hiding that I had forgotten what it felt like to simply exist without fear. I went to a family dinner at my parents' apartment. The space was small, but it was full. My mother had decorated it with plants and photographs. My father had built shelves and repaired the creaky cabinet doors. Marcus had designed a logo for the family. A stylized tree with 4 branches. It hung on the wall above the dinner table. We ate together, laughing and arguing and talking over each other. The conversation was not always smooth. Old habits died hard. My mother still made comments that stung. My father still retreated into silence sometimes. Marcus still had moments of immaturity. But we were learning. We were trying. And that was enough. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside. "I have something for you," she said. She handed me a small box, wrapped in brown paper. I opened it carefully. Inside was a bracelet. It was simple. A thin silver chain with a single charm. A small, stylized star. "I found it at an antique shop," she said. "It reminded me of you. Because you are the star of this family. You always were. We just did not see it." I put the bracelet on. It fit perfectly. "Thank you, Mom," I said, "for everything." She hugged me. "No," she said. "Thank you." I wore the bracelet home. It clinked against my keys as I walked through my door. I looked at it in the light of my apartment. A small star. A reminder of how far we had all come. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who sat at the old oak table. Invisible and afraid. She was still part of me. But she was no longer all of me. I had grown. We had all grown. And the growth was not over. It would never be over. That was the point. Summer came. The city baked under a relentless sun. I took a week off work and went to the coast. A small beach town I had discovered years ago. I walked on the beach. Read books. Ate seafood at a quiet restaurant. I thought about my life. About the journey that had brought me here. About the secrets I had carried and the truths I had finally told. I thought about my family. The mother who had learned to see me. The father who had learned to express himself. The brother who had grown up. I thought about the money. $300,000. It was a staggering amount. But it was just money. What mattered was what came after. I had spent years trying to earn my family's love. I had bought their affection with mortgage payments and tuition fees. But love cannot be bought. It can only be given freely. And now, for the first time, they were giving it freely. Not because I was paying their bills, but because I was their daughter, their sister, their family. I sat on the beach and watched the waves roll in. The ocean was vast and endless, stretching to a horizon I could never reach. It reminded me of how small I was, how small my problems were, how small my family's problems were. In the grand scheme of things, we were just people, flawed and broken and trying our best, and that was enough. I called my mother that evening. I am at the beach, I said. It sounds lovely, she said. It is, I said. I was thinking about you. About everything. There was a pause. Then she said, so was I. We talked for an hour. About the past, about the present, about the future. She told me she was proud of me again. This time, I believed her. When I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my hotel room and cried. Not sad tears. Not angry tears. Just tears. The kind that come when you finally let go of something you have been carrying for too long. I let go of the anger. I let go of the need for approval. I let go of the fear that I was not good enough. And I felt lighter than I had in years. September brought change. The air cooled. The leaves began to turn. I walked to work through streets carpeted with golden red, each step crunching through the remnants of summer. My mother started her literature classes. She came home with stacks of books and a new energy that made her seem 10 years younger. She called me to discuss the novels she was reading, analyzing themes and characters with an enthusiasm I had never seen in her. My father got a job. It was not a glamorous position, just a part-time role at a hardware store. But he loved it. He came alive talking about paint and plumbing and power tools. He was saving for a trip. He told me he wanted to see the mountains. He had never seen the mountains. Marcus started his graphic design program. He threw himself into it with a passion that surprised everyone, including himself. He sent me his projects, and I marveled at his talent. He was good, really good. I went to my office every day and did work I was proud of. I mentored younger colleagues. I led important projects. I made decisions that mattered. But I no longer defined myself by my job. My job was what I did, not who I was. Who I was had become something more complicated and more beautiful. I was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a person who had learned to stop hiding. A person who had learned that love was not something you earned by being useful. It was something you built by being honest. Diana threw a party for her birthday in mid-September. It was at a rooftop bar with views of the city. I brought my mother and father and Marcus. They were nervous at first, unsure of themselves among my work friends and city friends. But they relaxed. My mother charmed everyone with her stories. My father helped the bartender carry a heavy box. Marcus made people laugh. At one point, I stood back and watched them. My family. My strange, complicated, imperfect family. They were not the people I had grown up with. They were better. And so was I. Diana came up beside me. They clean up nice, she said, nodding at my family. They do. I agreed. How are you doing? She asked. Really? I took a deep breath. I am good, I said, for the first time in a long time. I am really, truly good. She put her arm around me. That is all I ever wanted for you, she said. A year later, I sat at a new table. It was not the old oak table with its scars and stains. That table had been sold with the house. This table was mine. A simple wooden piece I had bought at a furniture store. It had no history, no baggage. It was just a table. My family was gathered around it. My mother, her hair now streaked with gray, laughing at something Marcus had said. My father, healthier and happier, telling a story about his new job at a hardware store. Marcus, his arm around Elena, discussing their plans to travel. And me, at the head of the table, not because I had claimed the position, but because they had given it to me. The dinner was simple: roasted chicken, vegetables, bread, no pretense, no performance, just food and family. My mother raised her glass. To Sarah, she said, for never giving up on us, for teaching us what it means to be a family. I felt tears prick my eyes. I raised my glass. To new beginnings, I said. We drank. The conversation flowed around me. I listened to their voices, the overlapping rhythms of people who knew each other. It had taken years of pain and honesty to reach this point. But we had reached it. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who sat at the old oak table, silent and invisible, paying bills for people who did not see her. She was gone now. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who had learned that love was not something you earned. It was something you built together. My father reached over and squeezed my hand. A small gesture, but it said everything. I squeezed back. Outside, the stars were beginning to appear. The sky was wide and full of possibility. I did not know what the future held, but I knew that whatever came, I would face it with my family beside me. Not because they needed me, but because we needed each other. And that, I realized, was the real price of pride. Not the cost of keeping secrets, but the cost of letting them go. I smiled and turned back to the table. The food was getting cold. The conversation was waiting, and I was ready to be part of it. A year had passed since the dinner table confrontation. A year of change. A year of growth. A year of becoming. I sat at my own table now. It was in my apartment. The one I had bought with my own money. In a neighborhood I loved. The table was round. A conscious choice. No head. No foot. No hierarchy. Just a circle where everyone was equal. My family was gathered around it. My mother was helping herself to the salad she had brought. My father was telling a story about a customer at the hardware store. Marcus was showing Elena photos from his latest design project. And I was at the table. Not at the head, but just at my place. One among many. The conversation flowed around me. Laughter. Arguments. Stories. The sounds of a family that had learned to be together. I thought about the girl who had sat at the old oak table. The one who had felt invisible and alone. She was still here, but she was no longer hiding. She was no longer afraid. She had learned that she was worthy of love, not because of what she could provide, but because of who she was. And who she was had turned out to be someone worth knowing. My mother raised her glass. To Sarah, she said, for teaching us what family really means. Everyone raised their glasses. I felt tears prick my eyes. To family, I said. We drank. My father reached over and squeezed my hand. A small gesture, but it contained everything. I squeezed back. Outside, the city glittered. The stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Life was not perfect. It never would be. There would be new challenges, new difficulties, new moments of doubt, but I was ready for them. Because I had learned the most important lesson of all. The price of pride was high, but the cost of honesty was worth it. I smiled and turned back to my family. The food was getting cold. The night was young, and I was exactly where I was supposed to be.